Good day, everyone, and welcome to another USAID Soybean Innovation webinar. This is the third installment in the Soybean Innovation Lab Soy Dairy Network webinar series, and today's topic is Hygienic Practices for Food Safety in Small and Medium-Sized Businesses. My name is Maggie Cornelius, and I will be moderating today's webinar. I am the Program Coordinator for SIL's Human Nutrition Research Area, which focuses on integrating soy's high-quality protein into the diets of undernourished communities. One way we do this is by providing technological support to soy food enterprises in the developing world through the Soy Dairy Entrepreneur Network. The network is a virtual network of soy entrepreneurs around the world who work together to identify and address barriers to developing a sustainable soy food business. The network exchanges strategies for producing soy food and creating a business around it, and SIL facilitates this sharing of information. Within the network, the gamut of soy food enterprises is represented. They range from one-person startups who sell their products to their community to well-established companies that sell their products internationally. We have entrepreneurs in rural and urban settings, those who use automatic machines or manual processing tools, and our entrepreneurs produce lots of foods representing the versatility of soy: soy milk, soy yogurt, soy flour, baked goods, tofu, okara animal feed, soy coffee, soy nut snacks, soy weaning foods, and more. What is especially significant about this network is that 5 of the enterprises assist SIL with the first ever data analysis project, which focuses on the sustainability of the semi-automatic soy milk processing machine called the Soy Cow. These enterprises record their operation inputs and outputs, and SIL analyzes this data to determine an optimal business model for a soy dairy. With its technical expertise, SIL also provides the network a variety of network services, including on-site technical training, new product development, packaging designs, food and labeling certification, business development, food safety training, and soy cooking and utilization training. If you would like to get involved, please don't hesitate to contact us, and we will get you linked into this groundbreaking network. One of the primary ways the network shares its information is through this Soy Dairy Network webinar series. The first 2 webinars that we held focused on business development and packaging techniques. You can find these on the SIL website. Today's topic, food safety, is an essential part of any soy food operation. Specific and methodical steps need to be taken in any operation to avoid food spoilage and foodborne illness, and to get a business FDA certified in their country so that it can expand its commercial production, increase profits, and grow its community economically and nutritionally. Today we have an experienced team of speakers ready to present on the challenges and solutions to food safety in small and medium-sized soy dairies. At the end of the webinar, the audience is encouraged to field its questions to all of today's presenters by using the chat box in the GoToMeeting panel. For those who can't stay the whole time or who couldn't be in attendance today, this webinar is being recorded and will be posted on the SIL website. Today's webinar is sponsored by the USAID Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Soybean Value Chain Research. The mission of SIL is to provide researchers, extensionists, the private sector, NGOs, and funders operating across the entire value chain the critical information needed for successful soybean development. Specifically, it looks at the role the soybean can play in reducing poverty and malnutrition, and it provides technical information to those who develop soybeans in South America, Africa, and Asia. Today's discussion of food safety is separated into 2 parts. The first part will feature 3 members of the Soy Dairy Entrepreneur Network who represent 3 different types of soy food enterprises: small startup soy dairies run by women entrepreneurs in rural Benin, a small-scale FDA-certified soy milk business in Ghana, and a medium-sized soy food company in Uganda. These men will discuss the food safety challenges that their operations have faced and the solutions they have devised to these challenges, and the areas where work still needs to be done. The second part of the webinar will feature information about basic food safety practices to get you started on evaluating the food safety practices in your own business. Faustina Vimaraba, a nutrition officer at Ghana Health Service who has held multiple food safety trainings, will speak on this. Finally, we will have an overview of the process for getting FDA certification for your business, and food microbiology assistant professor at the University of Illinois, Matthew Stazowitz, will offer closing remarks on food safety considerations for soy foods specifically. The goal of this webinar is to provide entrepreneurs, development agencies, and soy dairy funders and donors a starting point for thinking about food safety, so that food safety will be seriously taken into account to help soy dairies improve their operation and expand their business. Please note that the information provided in this webinar today is not meant to apply to all soy dairy sites. When making food safety decisions, the soy dairy entrepreneur should have a food safety expert individually evaluate their operation and consult their country's FDA. We hope this webinar will help you take the first steps to implementing and improving food safety at your own operation. Our first speaker for the day is Mr. Patrice Awadhe, the managing director of an NGO in Benin called Soybean. Soybean is funded by the European Commission's platform for Afro-European Partnership on Agricultural Research for Development. The stated mission of Soybean is to contribute to Benin agricultural development through the improvement of soybean value-added chains by research development. Soybean targets women soy farmers and processors in much of its programming. Today, Mr. Patrice will speak to us about the soy food operations of their women soy entrepreneur partners in rural Benin. He will highlight the food safety challenges they face and the research Soybean is doing to overcome these challenges.
My name is Patrice Awadhe, the Managing Director of Soybean in Benin here, French country. Before I move to the purpose of this presentation, let me quickly introduce you in 3 points who we are. Soybean is a soybean producers organization gathered in a cooperative to defend and support public partnership initiative in the agricultural sector and especially in soybean industry in Benin. Soybean has been set up in 2009 as a result of the slump in the sale of cotton and the necessity to create a public-private partnership in order to fund market opportunity to soy farmers. We are working with soy women processors at small scale in 8 municipalities of Benin here. Now I'm going to tell you about the quality control practice in processing industry. Actually, there is no official quality control system among soy women. There is no quality control system among soy women processors we are working in which women just process soybean and sell end products in restaurants, school, local market, and supermarkets. However, in some plants like Fludor, SSB, the big industry who are processing soybean to produce oil and other things, quality control system like, for example, HACCP are in place for soy oil, cake, chills, and production. This raw material is controlled to make sure it does not contain foreign matter. The control is the processing chain is carried out by quality control officer from the Ministry of Agriculture of Benin, as well as research organizations like National Institute in RAB, a Faculty of Agronomical University of Benin, Wageningen University of Netherlands, and Lisbon, University of Lisbon and Portugal, for physicochemical and microbiological analysis at different stages in the process. Now let's turn the charge that small-scale processing units are facing in soy safety. There are a picture showing conditions in which soy is processed. Facilities are outdated. The existing stove for cooking the milk is traditional and is obtained by joining large pieces of stones and making use of firewood. Often the pot of milk of the fire is not well protected by its lid, leaving the smoke to mix with the milk. Women don't have an appropriate shaft for work. The mill for grinding soybean grain is rusty. Food safety challenges continuously. Processors are facing some challenges to have access to appropriate packaging. They reuse bottled plastic to packaging milk, often obtained from bars or restaurants. Benin does not yet have the glass bottle, not the plastic bottle, it's the glass bottle producing factory. So glass bottle comes from Nigeria at $0.08 US per bottles. The hygienic state of this packaging is doubtful and added to the reluctance of consumers to buy the products. This reduces the competitiveness of local soy milk processors. The milk shelf life does not go in more than 1 day. Now, what solutions have been developed for processors to overcome these challenges? Soybean, in collaboration with research organizations like University of Abomey-Calavi in Benin here, National Institute, University of Wageningen, University of Lisbon in Portugal, and farmers organization through some projects. You are already told it's financed by Commission Européenne and PayPal, help processor prolong the shelf life of the milk up to 6 months. Best hygienic practices are also taught during some soy milk processing demonstration stage. Bottles in glass have been processed by research, but the challenges as to how and where to find these bottles at the right time and at affordable price to be profitable for this existing. You see, as you see in this last pictures who are there, this is the last picture was taken at the 7th African Agricultural Science Week and FARA General Assembly in Rwanda last year in June. You can see the manager of PayPal, processor representative, the scientific experts who are testing the soy milk oil we are producing in Benin here in the iPad project program. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Patrice. Next, we will move to a brief presentation about Professor Joseph Osei's soy milk business in Ghana. Professor Osei can't be with us today, so I'm just going to briefly go over his presentation. Professor Osei runs a soy milk business in Ghana called AA Pure Soya Milk. It's a FDA certified business in northern Ghana with 3 staff members, and it produces 225 liters of soy milk a week. He sells this milk to local schools and markets. And Professor Awadhe is a pioneer in using glass bottles to package soy milk, achieving a shelf life of 1 to 3 months. Professor Awadhe doesn't use a machine for packaging using glass bottles. He does this all by hand. In terms of food safety and quality control at AA Pure Soya Milk, Professor Awadhe goes through his soybeans and takes out the bad beans and foreign matter before processing them and soaking them. And he makes sure that he uses very clean water from a borehole near his factory, and it's pumped from a reservoir, and it's chlorinated before he uses it. Professor Awadhe also sterilizes the bottles before filling them, so he acid washes them and heats them to 100 degrees Celsius, or boiling, before filling them with hot milk. And his workers wear standard clean white clothing in the processing room. They have coats on and boots on in a tiled floor to make sure that you keep everything sterile. And a challenge that Professor Awadhe is still facing is the coagulation of the milk due to insufficient cold storage arising from an irregular power supply at his factory. Electricity is not always available, and so one way that he has addressed this challenge is by using glass bottles and a hot fill method to achieve a longer shelf life. Now we will transition to a presentation by Mr. Charles Nsubuga, who is the Managing Director of Sesako Foods, which is a medium-sized soy milk country in Uganda. Charles is a pioneer in developing food safety systems to support a soy food operation that ships its products internationally to many countries in East Africa. Today, Charles will talk about these food safety systems, serving as an example of how small soy food operations can take the next step to formalizing and expanding their production methods.
Good morning and good afternoon elsewhere. My name's Subuga Charles. I am the Managing Director of Sesako Limited. Sesako Limited is a medium food processing enterprise. When I say medium, it is by the standards of Uganda. Like I said, growing medium-scale food processing industry employing over 80 workers. We produce between 300 and 4 liters of soy milk per day. Sometimes depends on the demand. We use a soy cow, which we secured from Malnutrition Matters, and we also right now use a small wet milling machine. The company goal is to excel in the production of and distribution of high-quality processed cereals and pulse foods. The company vision is to build Sesako Limited into a multinational food processing enterprise, and the goal is to improve the living conditions of the shareholders, the workers, and the community in which all the stakeholders work and live. As a company, we source our raw materials for soy yogurt and soy milk from smallholder farmers, sometimes direct to these smallholder farmers or sometimes through their umbrella organizations. The biggest challenge we face in Uganda is post-harvest handling, especially when it comes to producing soy milk and soy yogurt. Because of the low quality of the beans supplied, beans come with a lot of trash, a lot of stones, a lot of dust, a lot of non-bean particles. And sometimes it is done deliberately, or sometimes it's done by farmers themselves. Deliberately for guys who want to add in more kilos, to add more weight, like putting stones directly. The good varieties of soybeans are specified to farmers and traders. It all starts by sample a new supply of beans against the specifications. We give a specifications to our suppliers and tell them, these are the beans we want, these are the varieties we want, this is the moisture content we want, we give out specifications to them. Then they supply a sample, which sample we keep, and then we go to number 2, where a truck delivers the supply, and which supply we check against the sample supplied some time. And then go to number 4. The beans are put on hold until the lab test is done. We don't have a lab at our small processing plant. We depend on service providers. Currently, we depend on Makerere University of Food Science and Technology, where we take the samples for testing, most especially for aflatoxin. Then after the test has been done, depending on the results, we can release the batch for production, or we can reject it. Now, once it is released for production, we start with sorting and dry cleaning. And then after sorting and dry cleaning, we go to the next stage of wet cleaning, where we wash the beans 3 to 4 times to make sure the beans are thoroughly clean, and we use very clean water. And then after that, we go to the stage of soaking. We normally soak our soybeans that are going to process soy milk and soy yogurt for 8 hours. We normally do that overnight, so that in the morning we just start, working. We can soak the beans at around midnight, and then by 8 in the morning we start processing. Then we drain what was soaked, and then we start on the process of wet milling using a small, wet milling machine. Then we go to the process of cooking and filtering and bean flavor management. In Uganda, like many other African countries, they don't like that bean flavor, that soybean smell. Not like some of the Asian countries where they like the smell in it, but for us, we try to eliminate that bean flavor. It's a big challenge to many of my other soy milk processors. But myself, I managed to get a formula that manages that bean flavor to almost 90% or 95%. And then after that management of the bean flavor, then the yogurt processing starts at that point. The pictures you see here, you can see the soy cow we use and some of the stuff we use. And then we have also a sterilizer. You can see we sterilize our cups, the one we use for packaging yogurt. We don't have this factory that making these cups. We just get them from Nairobi. Nairobi is the capital city of Kenya, next to Uganda. In the production room, we try as much as possible to tile all the floors and the walls where soy yogurt and soy milk production is taking place. It's a small room, but we call it a milk lab, soy milk lab. We use stainless or plastic utensils like buckets and other equipment we use in our soy milk production. We use unperfumed liquid soap for cleaning those utensils. Our staff wear protective gear covering hands, head, mouth, nose, body, feet. We don't allow rings and watches, necklaces or earrings. Medical checkups and fitness test certificates are obtained after 6 months. Actually, we bring medical staff to come and check our staff and to see if they are fit to work in a food processing plant. That is generally for all food processing, because we are not specifically only on soy yogurt. We do other products, but right now I'm following the soy yogurt and soy milk. For traceability, we put batch numbers on all the batches we produce on the products. We have a digital machine that puts those batch numbers. Expiry is digitally placed on the product. Soy milk lasts 6 to 14 days in a fridge, 1 month in a freezer. Soy yogurt lasts 1 month in a fridge, 3 days on shelf. Production records are kept. Bean varieties, aflatoxin check results, moisture contents, ingredients, days output, all those are such the information that we keep in record. Here you can be able to see a small fridges we use at our plant. And then you can see a small truck here. It's a motorbike truck kind of, that helps to deliver our products around. Yeah, I think that's what I can show you here around here. Yeah, we are looking forward to expand ourselves. We have already visualized and imagined how our factory is going to be for the soy milk. So this is how it's going to be. We have not yet started construction of it. These are just images we have in our mind. Still looking for funds, mobilizing funds, and be able to start, building up soy milk production factory. In East Africa, we don't have any serious factory producing soy milk. The milk we have in Uganda, soy milk in Uganda, Tanzania, and Rwanda, and Burundi is just imported from, other countries. And yet, Uganda is one of the major soy growing countries on top of Zimbabwe, South Africa, and Nigeria. So we think if we can get some of the technology in some of your countries, you guys, or from Germany or from China, we can be able to produce shelf-stable soy milk and then add on to the current milk on the market. Thank you for listening to me. I'm Charles Susubuga Sasako Limited, Kampala, Uganda.
Thank you very much, Charles, for that presentation. And thank you to all of our soy food entrepreneurs for their presentations today. Now we will move to the second part of our webinar, where we will discuss food safety basics and specifics to soy food operations. First up, we have Faustina Vimaraba, a nutrition officer for the Greater Accra region of the Ghana Health Service. With the Ghana Health Service, Faustina has led numerous food safety trainings, and today she will instruct us in basic food safety considerations for any business.
Thank you. So talking about food safety, I'm Faustina Vimaraba, Ghana Health Service Nutrition Officer. Food safety, looking at the production room. Basically, I think the prof has talked about it. The main things you need is the hazard analysis critical control points. That is the management system that is used to address and analyze and control both biological, chemical, and physical hazards from the raw food during the production, procurement, handling, distribution, and consumption. So now let's look at a typical production room. What are some of the basic things that need to be done? The floor of the production room, the facilities that you are using, the floor, it needs to be clean. And you make sure that there are no debris. When you look at the facility itself, for example, if you are going to do the soya flour, the mill has to be clean. The grinding mill would have to be clean. Physically, you have to inspect to see there are no debris. Disinfect if possible. You would also have to look at the personnel that are involved. Aside cleaning your facility, those that are involved in the production, if you look at the requirements by the FDA and other authorities that are in charge of food to make sure that food is safe, you have to make sure that the workers do not carry any diseases that can contaminate the food. So they need to go through laboratory analysis to make sure that they are free of diseases that can be contaminated through the handling of food. Their personal hygiene is also another key thing that needs to be done. You have to look at protective clothing for the workers. You may have to need gowns to protect, to wear, maybe some hair nets for the hair, and sometimes their nails. If you are wearing artificial nails, depending on the points of production, the person might need to wear some clean gloves to be able to prevent contamination to the food. We would also have to look at toilet facilities and other, so that when they go, you need clean water and soap to ensure that they wash their hands before they come into contact with the food. At each step of the food production, there have to be this program in place to make sure that is safety measures, to make sure that it is clean. If it has to do with the packaging, whatever they are going to use to package. In Africa, people will use the plastic bottles or plastic bags or containers. So you have to make sure that these are thoroughly clean, sometimes disinfected. In the small-scale business, people might not have huge machinery to do that. So you need to use clean water and soap to clean these bottles first, and then you now, if it is the soya milk, you put in your milk, if it is the soya flour. And during packaging, you have to ensure that it is well sealed off, so that when it is even in the shops, it is not being infested with insects and other pests. So when we look at the hazard analysis and critical control points, it's basically talking about three things. That is to avoid physical hazard, that is removing all foreign material. That is if you come to talk about the raw material you want to use, be it the soya bean. Physically, you have to look out for any foreign material that is in the soya bean and pick it out. When you can also talk about chemical hazards. Chemical hazards could be, in our setting, from the farms. The farmers, sometimes when they preserve the beans, they use some chemical things to preserve. You have to make sure that it is safe. And there are methods for you either to soak, as somebody shared earlier, to soak it, to wash it very well several times to ensure that the chemical is off and is safe for consumption. For biological, I have talked about the possibility of the workers infecting the food with either bacteria or viruses, and that has to also be checked. So basically, these are the things that one has to look out for when you are producing the food, and to minimize risk of contamination at each point, you have to ensure that, let's say for one, your utensils are clean, your equipment are clean, you avoid cross-contamination, you also make sure that you use safe water. And in our setting, you can have water that is not safe, so you might have to treat the water either by boiling, which is the easiest way, or by using other chemicals to make sure that it's safe, because before you use it to produce the food. Labeling of the food, it's also very important, and storage, how the food is being stored. If it's not stored well, there can be pesticide infestation like weevils, and that will make the food unsafe. And we will also talk about aflatoxins, which is a very big problem in our parts of the world. It is said that if you don't look at the physical hazard very well, that is in the beans, removing the spoiled beans, making sure that after roasting, you remove all that is burnt before you go ahead with your production. It can cause a lot of hazard. So I think in a summary, these are the things that you need to look at for looking at these three areas to make sure that you eliminate it. That is eliminating physical hazard, eliminating the chemical hazard and biological hazard by ensuring that there's protocols for personal hygiene of the workers, their health is being checked, by ensuring that your facility is clean, that is your floors, your sanitation is being taken care of, by ensuring that the equipment that you are using are very clean and disinfectant if possible, by ensuring that you have, in terms of packaging, you have protective clothes that will prevent cross-contamination. Storage is being done well, labeling is being done well, and everything will be safe for the consumer. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Faustina, for your presentation and your expertise. We're so glad you were able to join us today. So another way to focus on food safety in your production room is to work towards getting your business certified by your country's Food and Drug Administration, which permits you to sell your products to a wider customer base. Two members of the Soy Dairy Entrepreneur Network, Flora Amaglo and Frank Paget, contributed this information because both of them have worked towards getting FDA certification for their soy milk enterprises in Ghana. After you have obtained a business license to produce your food, you can apply for FDA certification. Basically, this involves getting your facility inspected by the FDA in your country to see if your facility complies with food safety and environmental standards as specified by your country's FDA. And then FDA officials will conduct a laboratory test on your product to test for such things as aflatoxins and physiochemical content in your product to make sure that it is safe for widespread production and labeling by the FDA. So here is a detailed list of all the steps that you must take and the forms you have to fill out to move towards FDA certification. And this information here is specific to Ghana, but if you have if you want further information about the process of getting FDA certified, please contact SIL and we can get you connected with the necessary resources. Our final speaker for the day is Assistant Professor Matthew Stasiewicz, Professor of Food Microbiology at the University of Illinois. Professor Stasiewicz will speak about critical control points that you should achieve in soy milk production and specific risks that producers can face when working with soy food.
Yes, hello everybody. Thank you for taking the time to join in this seminar and listen to me speaking from the University of Illinois. It was very engaging for me to hear those stories of the different producers that have struggled with different challenges in soy milk production across different levels, and I hope that I can abstract some general principles that might help anyone else planning to start a soy milk business or improve theirs to learn a little bit more from each of the stories that were told. And the thing that I want to start off with is that as I think of soy milk and soy yogurt and all of the other products that were being discussed, to stress that this has a potential to be both a very safe and a very high quality product sold commercially. And it's important to differentiate both safety and quality and know that this can be done well. From a safety standpoint, we in the food safety world like to think of the system that was mentioned once, HACCP, the Hazard Analysis Critical Control Point System, and where in a process we know that we can control a major food safety risk. And in the case of any of these soy milk processes, it's really important to highlight, particularly as you're looking at a process flow, a process diagram, or even going for certification, that there's a very good critical control point inherent to any soy milk production, that step of cooking the beans, whether that's milled and boiling. There have been some folks with the soy cow who are using pressure cooking. Either of those, it's a very large heat treatment, sufficient to, especially under the soy cow pressure cooking system, basically render the product near commercially sterile. So the inherent potential of soy milk can be very, very safe due to that cooking step. The key then to moving forward with a high quality product that can be sold commercially is to protect that very safe product and prevent contamination after that critical control point of cooking, because much of the risks that had been described of low shelf life, of coagulation, of other quality concerns are largely come from the introduction of either spoilage bacteria, maybe other yeasts and molds, or even poor temperature control, and then allowing the product after it had been controlled to degrade in quality. And so, and this is a little bit, I think, of what the basic food safety practices talk might have touched on, but a lot of what needs to be thought about, and we saw some examples doing very well, is the processes that you can put in place in your business to protect your very safe cooked soy milk media from the introduction of any bacteria or other particles that could cause harm. And so in food safety, you know, the basics are pretty obvious. They talked about that in certification in Ghana. One is to have a facility that can be cleaned and then is cleaned regularly, so you have to protect the food from the facility. There's also a lot of work that can be done, and you saw good examples of that, of protecting the food product from any risks introduced by the staff. And so we saw a lot of good examples of protective uniforms, of gloves, of employee practices, things like ensuring employees are well trained. Hand washing is critical, and even some aspects like employee health. It's a good idea to have a process to allow employees who present with illnesses to not have to process food on that day, whether that's being able to afford sick leave, or maybe it's moving them to some other aspect of production where they can still work but not risk transferring. So it's really about creating a cleanable, safe facility. It's about creating an employee culture where hand washing and protection and sterile technique is practiced. So protecting the food from the facility, protecting the food from any risks introduced by the staff, and then ensuring that the food is packaged appropriately in order to continue to create a good barrier. And that was the last piece I really wanted to highlight right now, is we saw a lot of different challenges in terms of packaging materials. Some folks were using glass, some folks were using plastic bottles, and in principle I think any of those could work. The challenge is, how do you ensure that those bottles are both cleaned and sanitized prior to adding the soy milk? And so for glass, that becomes a lot easier because those can be put in hot water baths, acid treatments, and then potentially even boiled or heat treated after filling. Or as we saw, hot filled. With plastics, it's more challenging. But for folks, if you have to reuse, even reusable plastic materials could be okay. What I would suggest there is a process of, prior to filling the soy milk, some very thorough cleaning of those bottles, both to rinse out any you know, if it's water deposits, milk deposits, even if it's coming from a bar, you know, any sort of beer or wine deposits, rinse all that physical material out. But then a second treatment with clean water and some sort of sterilizing solution, maybe a light amount of acetic or lactic acid. Those are food grade. Using chlorinated water is possible for sterilization, but you need to then rinse the bottles again with microbially clean water. Depending on your water source, that's a challenge. So again, once you've produced the product, you've protected it through processing with clean facilities and clean people, you then need to create a clean packaging environment where your bottles have been cleaned and sterilized. And even in plastics, that's possible, but using first a cleaning treatment to remove debris, and then some probably either chemical, or, although we also saw UV and heat treatment, way to remove any other physical contaminant, any microbial contamination. If you get those three things in place, facilities, employee practices, and clean packaging, you should be able to preserve the very microbially safe product that's achieved through the soy milk cooking. And then, you know, proper storage. If you've got a cold chain, that'll extend shelf life. If you don't, you can keep moving forward. Those were basically the elements that I wanted to stress. And I'm happy to take any other questions in the closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Matt. That was really informative. We'll definitely look to you during the question and answer session in a few minutes. Now we are going to move to the question and answer section of our webinar. Our first question today is directed at Patrice Awadhe at Soybean, and it is from Angela, who's asking about the 6-month shelf life that Soybean research has achieved for its soy milk. Patrice, can you speak about the 6-month shelf life that Sojajnan's research has achieved for soy milk?
Yes, I can talk about this one. You know, before we start this project, the women who are processing soybean to milk, they cannot storage the milk after more than 1 day. After work with the research department, University Research and Institute, National Institute Research in Benin, who call it INRAB, we are testing so many process, so many technologies to know how many days we can keep the milk out the fridge. Still now, the processing we are using let us have the result than 6 months. We can keep the milk out the fridge more than 6 months still now. Is according to the technologies. This technology is the sterilization technologies.
Thank you very much, Patrice. Our next question comes from Flora Amagla in Ghana, and she's asking Charles Nsubuga of Sesiko Foods how he manages to prevent his soy yogurt from separating.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, it has been a task because in the beginning of producing this product, we experienced a lot of challenges like, swelling of those cans and busting out because of gas, because of, fermentation. So we kept on trying, different ideas until we realized that sterilization really contributes a lot to, preventing this product from really separation. Secondly, I told you that I came up with a special kind of formula combining different spices and ingredients here to make one product which I now call the soy milk solution. I think that soy milk solution I discovered has been responsible to maintaining this product not separating. So combining that soy milk solution and then the sterilization of the containers that I'm using, it has kind of helped to, increase the shelf life of this product without separation.
Thank you very much, Charles. Our next questions come from Francois Stetman and Ahmed Kablan about aflatoxins. They asked a similar question, so I'm just going to ask it. And Charles can speak to it, Faustina might be able to speak to it, Matt might be able to speak to it, as well as Patrice. So the question is, what is the cost of aflatoxin testing of the soybeans, and is the testing done systematically? And Ahmed wants to know, how much of aflatoxins is a problem. Is this a huge problem that soybean processors face? So Charles, can you speak about the cost of the aflatoxin testing at Sesiko?
Yeah, well, if I put it in terms of dollars, it's around $30 to $40 per testing, and we don't frequently do testings of aflatoxin for the soybeans for one reason that you can determine soybeans that were dried very well. We have been informed, and most of you are aware, that aflatoxin comes into the product due to poor post-harvest handling. But when the post-harvest handling is properly done, you may not have challenges of aflatoxin into the product. Drying and storage, transportation, once all those are managed very well, you can look at the beans and you can tell they are really very well handled. Soybeans does not so much have aflatoxin except in bad handling, apart from maize. Maize is the one that has got the highest risk, and also probably groundnuts. But sometimes when you look at the beans of soybeans and you determine they were not stored well, then you may make a determination that you should go for aflatoxin analysis, and the cost is around $30 to $40 per testing in Uganda.
Thank you, Charles. Faustina, would you like to chime into this question?
Okay, so I'm not quite sure the amount, the cost of doing the aflatoxin test in Ghana. But what I know is that when you want to register a product or you want it to go through the requirement, you need to do this annually. When the FDA certifies the product and it's okay, annually you would have to make sure they test for aflatoxins. That I'm quite sure.
Thank you, Faustina. Our next question comes from Benoit Nanlanfin, and it's a general question to all, which is how do you ensure proper drying and storage of the raw material? And also, how do you test for the presence of residual pathogen microorganisms after production and before marketing?
Sure, well, I can jump in a little bit about testing because I suspect that others would be better able to speak about how to ensure drying and storage of raw materials, folks who've struggled with those challenges. But the difficulty with testing for the microbial quality of the soy milk or the soy yogurt really is that concern that was even mentioned with the aflatoxin testing, that those require at least a basic microbiology lab. And so ultimately, to do that work right, you or someone you contract with would need to have access to microbial media and plates and sampling equipment. And even simple tests can be done. And so if you're required to have a certificate of analysis for certification, right, that's what Faustina talked about, some of that will need to happen. But really the better system is to put in place that really high quality HACCP system where you know that you're producing a high quality product, and then every unit that you produce should be definitely safe and should be of high quality. It's much more important to focus on prevention of a problem than testing individual units for any particular harm, because ultimately every unit you test, it's a unit you can't sell, and you can't test every unit. So focusing on building good systems is more important than end product testing, at least in my opinion. But when there are regulatory requirements for end product testing, you have to do that, and you'll probably have to contract with a lab to do it, which is pretty expensive. So anyway, those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, that is the case of my company, and in the case of Uganda, where first of all, we specify the moisture content we need in the raw material we're going to use in the yogurt and soy milk. So in other words, our raw material suppliers are supposed to know what exactly we need, so that we avoid the challenge of drying our setups. I think the only thing we remain to do is just storing. You know, sometimes it becomes easy to store, cereals that are of recommended, moisture content. Like in our case, soybeans will require one that is between 11 to 13%, and we just raised the standard recently and said we need soybeans of 11% or 10 to 11%. So once you have soybeans of 10 to 11%, it's easy to store. Secondly, there are some scientific bags that have been introduced on the market. I remember seeing some of them in the US, either in the University of Illinois or one university in the US there. That can be used to store, raw materials that you think you're not going to have them used immediately. You can store them for a long time. So the only thing that remains for SESACO is to store. But as far as drying is concerned, it's supposed to be done by, the suppliers of the raw material. And then when it comes to testing, yes, we don't have a lab in our factory, but we depend on service providers. When we do for a big batch, let's say for maybe 50 tons of soybeans or maize or 20 tons, you just do a random sampling of the product, and then you take them to the lab, then they do the testing, then you pay one fee, and then you really get to know the status of the raw materials that you're going to use. And but then after we do another testing that is after. That is periodically, not frequently. Like when we take them to certain labs and then they are tested, we get to know the status of the product. That one is not done frequently, actually. And I concur with the previous speaker that high quality of HACCP can really make you avoid those unnecessary costs of testing every now and then.
Thank you very much, Charles. We have time for one more question, which is from Patrice Awadhe at Sojajna, and it's directed towards Professor Joseph Ostay. And a couple of other people have asked this question about Professor Ostay's method for manually filling glass bottles with soy milk and achieving a longer shelf life. So Patrice would like to know when and where and how do you have access to the bottles, and how much do they cost?
Well, the bottles are recycled bottles obtained from a company in Ghana, located at Accra. The cost is about, in terms of Ghanaian cedis, it's about 50 pesos, that is half a cedi per bottle. They are not very expensive, but they might be very, very clean. You have to acid wash them before you can use them. Now, how do we do the bottling? We bottle directly from the cooker using a funnel which is directed into the bottle, and then we immediately cork it and then reboil. That's the procedure that we use. We have pictures available, so the customer can ask and we can send them some of the pictures, or if he is able, he can pay a visit to us and see how it is done. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Ostay. And I just have one more comment. Someone wrote in about the aflatoxin question, Angela Steen, and she suggests that to reduce aflatoxins, use of the biocontrol Aflasafe, which is produced by IITA, can help. It's already being scaled by IITA to Nigeria, and it might also be becoming available in other countries as well, such as Malawi. So we'll provide more information about that when we get more information from Angela. But thank you so much to everyone else who asked questions. This webinar is a production of the Soybean Innovation Lab. SIL is a consortium of soybean experts that supports organizations, entrepreneurs, governments, and the private sector with technical guidance, evidence-based knowledge, and innovation to develop the soybean value chain in Africa and other developing areas. Our technical expertise involves soybean plant breeding, soybean agronomics, appropriate scale harvest and planting mechanization, soybean utilization in human and livestock diets, building sustainable soy food enterprises, and advising policymakers and organizations on efforts to ensure women's empowerment and gender balance are present in soybean development. We also do advocacy work with policy officials to promote the economic and nutritional benefits of soy in developing communities. If you believe your project would benefit from these skill sets, we'd love to collaborate with you. We also encourage all of you to follow us on Twitter, friend us on Facebook, and visit our website, soybeaninnovationlab.illinois.edu. There, you can sign up for our newsletter to stay in the loop about other SIL events and webinars. Please contact me, Maggie Cornelius, at mmcornel@illinois.edu with follow-up questions about this webinar, or if you would like to get involved with the Soybean Innovation Lab and the Soy Dairy Entrepreneur Network. Thank you again to everyone, and have a great day.